Hey, come on in and spend some time with the film hobbyist. My name is Lydia, and I love movies. We are sitting here in my attic room on a hot July day, the sun beating down through the window, a box fan just to my right giving us minimal relief. I brought up a small white end table from our living room, and on it is sitting a tall glass of ice and 2 pitchers, one filled with freshly squeezed lemonade, the other with freshly brewed iced tea, minimally sweetened. Feel free to pour yourself a glass of either, or both, and find relief from the heat in the icy condensation on your hand. Take time to enjoy the sweetness and the sharp acid of the lemon or the mild bitterness of the tea's tannins. This is an era of trouble. Suffering, of course, is a long-term condition of humanity. It has existed throughout history, now is not unique. And yet it is fair to say we are in a heightened state of awareness about it. Work feels different. Large language models are forcing themselves into entire industries, changing work culture and job searching in devastating ways. Everything is somehow more expensive and worse in quality. Grocery budgeting is a nightmare. The news is just awash with awful wars and injustice and corruption, all seemingly out of our control. So it's important to enjoy what is before us, to hold the cold glass to our foreheads on an oppressively hot day, to notice the perk of mild caffeine, the pucker of our mouths to lemonade, the surprising bitterness of cane sugar. To remember that we are people who matter, and that we are in bodies that have sensory experiences to notice and enjoy. It is important to sit and observe, to take a breath and let the stress leave our bodies. Which is what I would like to offer to the many doctors and nurses of the Pitt. Come on, Dr. Robbie, you'll feel better after a glass of lemonade. Santos, it is easier to chart when you're subsisting on more than protein bars. Dr. Mohan, just sit down and take a gosh dang breath. If you are not familiar with the Pitt, that's okay. It's a medical drama on HBO Max that's only been out since last year, a mere 2 seasons under its belt. It's the baby of its executive producer and star, Noah Wyle. Wyle was a mainstay of the show ER, his character John Carter beginning as a medical student and continuing as a major part of the ensemble for an entire decade. Because of this, Wyle gets a lot of fan mail from medical professionals, sharing how his performance inspired their careers. It seems a little bit silly now, but ER was considered a breakthrough in realism for medical dramas when it debuted in 1995. By the time I learned about it, ER was pretty much a soap opera. But for a particular demographic, ER was an important show. In 2020, the fan mail changed. Doctors and medical professionals began to message Noah Wyle about what was happening, the sheer exhaustion and burnout and overwhelm in the midst of a global crisis. And Wyle started to mull on what a post-COVID ER reboot might look like. The reboot fell through. But from the bones of that idea emerged The Pitt, an emergency room-centered medical drama for a post-COVID world. And they also made a really interesting structural decision. Each season would be a single shift, 12 hours spilling into 15 hours with overtime. Like the show 24, each episode would cover a single hour. This has an incredible amount of impact on how the story functions, with some pretty unique character and thematic implications as well. I've never been a huge fan of medical dramas, a big reason of which comes down to structure. A typical medical drama features one main medical issue per episode. It's introduced at the beginning, and by the end, it's dealt with. I don't mind the single episode mystery style in police or detective procedurals, but I don't find medical cases on their own to be very interesting. Just a preference thing. And knowing that it'll be fixed in an hour gives me less reason to get invested. But the Pitt structure actually changes this. Because the entire season is 15 hours of almost real time, cases don't have to be finished in a single episode. And that adds a level of intrigue that has kept my interest in a way other medical dramas don't. There are still plenty of single episode issues, an emergency trauma case, a small injury, but that's not always the case. Like a real emergency room, patients have to wait a long time, and we'll have a case introduced early in the season that will take multiple episodes before it's resolved, which means the significance of the case and its story purpose may change from episode to episode. One episode, it could be a nice background story, and then it could turn into the next episode's crisis. Or a patient may leave and have their condition worsen and end up returning later in the season because it's later in the day. The show is actually cool to rewatch because many of the memorable cases from later in the season will actually be present in the waiting room. You'll see a doctor come in and walk past a patient who will die of a heart attack 5 episodes later. A pretty significant event for one of the medical students. That might be the reason I get excited by the structure, this innovation in the medical drama, but it isn't the reason they included it. The reason is to explore the impact of a long day of work on doctors and other medical staff, to learn their coping mechanisms, and to witness their burnout as their mental health deteriorates. All medical dramas are actually about the doctors involved. This is why they have a tendency to get soapy and off the rails the longer they go on. The character stories have to go places, and since the sets stay the same and the work stays the same, most of the long-term drama comes from the interpersonal relationships. Who's sleeping with whom? Is their relationship a secret? Is it an affair? How will it make work awkward if they break up? Or maybe they both like each other, but keep missing the opportunity, slow burn style. Over time, this gets tedious. The one medical drama I have been a fan of, before the Pitt, BBC's Call the Midwife, has sometimes gotten so bad that I start fast-forwarding the relationship scenes because holy cow, has Nurse Trixie a horrendous love life. The emotional stakes keep rising until we're in full melodrama territory. The Pitt could absolutely become this if it runs 10 years, no doubt in my mind. But they've given themselves an interesting out. Because each season takes place over one day, there really isn't any time for this romantic drama. In season 1, it's revealed at one point that 2 doctors had a previous relationship, but this is just a layer of their interpersonal dynamic, not drama. And because there's such a time gap between seasons, it makes perfect sense if an actor doesn't want to return. No need to kill them in a car accident that requires their colleagues to operate on them. They just transferred to another hospital. It's a common enough occurrence in medicine that there's no issue. These features mean that relationships can only move so much in a single season. Maybe a friendship starts, or a rivalry. Maybe there's a singular breakup that was already brewing in episode 1, and we don't get to see the full consequences of. It's such a narrow window of time that the relationship dynamic moves at a slower pace. And the slower pace, that micro movement of character growth, contributes to a sense of buildup in each character, even as the incredibly quick pace of the emergency room rushes around them. The Pitt is set in the emergency room of the fictitious Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Center, whose staff both derogatorily and fondly refer to it by that name. Pitt with 2 T's, like William Pitt, for whom the city of Pittsburgh is named, but definitely on purpose sounding like Pitt with 1 T. Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Center is a teaching hospital. So amongst the full-fledged doctors, we also have a combination of senior residents, junior residents, interns, and medical students. The teaching hospital gimmick is a great excuse to include both highly technical medical jargon and copious amounts of exposition. Residents and medical students have to talk through the decisions they're making with the doctors training them, which includes quizzes on the various conditions and treatments they're facing. Those explanations are for the audience more than the various characters, but teaching hospital is an excellent handwave here. Our primary protagonist is the attending physician, Dr. Michael Rabinovich, who goes by Dr. Robbie, a skilled and generally compassionate individual with a more casual attitude toward rules, whether that be hospital policy, cultural expectations, or sometimes the law. But he isn't a rock star hotshot. He just cares more about people and their care than ticking boxes. He's also very broken, specifically experiencing PTSD from COVID. In amongst the regular horrors of having to watch the painful, lonely deaths of countless people dealing with limited supplies and no real treatment at the time, Dr. Robbie had to make the choice to pull his mentor off the breathing machine keeping him alive. A necessary choice that nonetheless haunts him. The Pit is filled with all kinds of wonderful ensemble players. Dana, the charge nurse, who takes no crap from anyone and cares fiercely for her coworkers and patients. Dr. Langdon, the hotshot senior resident with secrets. Dr. Mel King, big-hearted, dorky, and probably autistic. Santos, the confident and bullish medical student. Princess and Perla, the highly skilled Filipino nurses who trash everyone in Tagalog in front of their faces, and on and on. The Pit is very interested in the specifics of how the hospital functions, so the women who work the front desk get character beats, as does the guy working security in the ER bay. There are sequences watching the cleaners who prepare the trauma bays, and making fun of the ER techs who struggle to fill out charts manually. The show has a reputation for realism, except when it comes to obstetrics cases. Not unexpected when the show's consultants are ER doctors who carry a reputation of not knowing what to do with pregnant patients. Season 1 was expertly crafted to use this show's innovative structure to its fullest extent for intrigue, character, and theme. They built a really strong, overarching narrative, raising the stakes for Dr. Robbie so he could come to a breaking point by the season's end. Halfway through the season, there is a well-foreshadowed disaster that is narratively exciting, provides a major trauma trigger for Dr. Robbie, and serves as an emotional test for every one of the doctors and nurses on staff. What happens to each character in the face of a major crisis? Do they rise to the occasion with grace? Do they crumble under pressure? Do they ride such an adrenaline high that they stop taking care of themselves? It provides a little microcosm of similar stakes to COVID. It also made an incredibly hard act to follow. The big disaster TV plot is the kind of thing that usually comes after a show has been running for a while. Like, Season 1 is usually more low stakes for us to get to know the world, and the excitement is fairly grounded. The longer a show goes on, the more excitement it begins to chase. this kind of big disaster is more of a peak 3rd to 5th season kind of thing, after which shows often run downhill. How do you top that kind of high? Either you end up at world-saving stakes, or the show begins to spin its wheels. And with the Pitt especially, this kind of structure could really ruin the sense of discovery through the formula. Part of the joy of that first season was the not knowing. Which cases are big deals? Which are small? It was wild to realize how well the disaster was foreshadowed, all the ways it had been building all day. But if the audience is expecting a mid-season twist, well then that ruins some of the fun. And it also misses out for the whole reason of the show in the first place. The Pitt is not primarily an exciting and suspenseful thrill ride full of twists. It is, because it's well made, but that is not its purpose. Its purpose is to talk about the mental health of doctors and medical professionals, specifically about burnout, the slow death wrought by a hard day of work. And what makes a day hard? Well, yeah, it is devastating to work at a hospital in the midst of a crisis. It is terrible to watch people die, especially a great number of people, to make 100 split-second decisions about who is going to make it and who isn't. But those aren't very common, especially for a single location hospital. Your community may have a massive fire, or a disease outbreak, or a natural disaster. Maybe you'll see something awful once in a decade or so. For most medical professionals, it isn't a singular event, even one like COVID, that causes the most burnout and depression. It's the 1,000 cuts of a long, ordinary day of work. The second season of The Pitt chose to go all in on soul-crushing work. There is a big disaster, but one of the sorts that happens fairly regularly to hospitals, and instead of thrilling life or death decisions, it only means more paperwork, an entire hospital having to go analog to remember the physical minutiae of forms and fax machines. Frankly, season 2 is a little bit paperwork, the season, and there was some rebellion from the fandom. For a certain section of viewers, The Pitt was a twisty thriller, and so they kept looking for the twists in season 2. Which character was going to die tragically on the job? Which characters were secretly hooking up? What was the identity of the baby abandoned in episode 1? And they were pretty disappointed by the season. These kinds of fans began grumbling about how lame the characters' storylines were, how every episode was a never-ending nightmare of the same issues over and over again. One character's storyline was that she just couldn't seem to finish her charts. She had to stay late to fill out forms. How boring and soul-crushing is that? Which is, I think, the point. Yes, season 2 of this show was not the finely tuned masterpiece of season 1, but I think it did an incredibly good job of using its form and structure to tell a particular story. Working in the ER can be a kind of purgatory, an endless stream of work that will wear you down. Even if, as a doctor, you are incredibly calm and composed and organized and orderly, your body may fail you, leaving you weak in the face of overwork and little rest. Perhaps you even have rest laying ahead. But when your normal is overwork, how can you turn off? Can you really stand the silence? I think this is a valuable conversation, one that procedural television is uniquely suited to facilitate. A procedural, a cop show, law show, medical show, is comfort watching for a lot of people because of its predictability. There's catharsis in a formula playing out. Watching people do a job, solve a problem, finish the task is comforting. But when the problem is still the same, episode after episode, or we're seeing different facets of the same problem, we don't get the same kind of relief. If the characters are spinning their wheels, so are we as the audience. There are lots of shows that do this because of bad writing. My husband and I recently watched a few seasons of Smallville for the delight of how bad it is, and had fun yelling at the TV about how absolutely stupid the recursive romantic plots are. Lost, a show I love, but recognize its flaws, really started spinning its wheels in season 3 with the stupid polar bear cages that they kept trying to escape for half a season. The Pitt, on the other hand, spent its second season spinning its wheels intentionally. It hadn't run out of ideas, it just denied us the catharsis we were used to. It gave us the meta experience of having a really hard, long burnout day where you just can't escape your problems. We did get some good thrills and high-quality character work. There's an episode just from the nurse's perspective that honored their care in a way that left me sobbing. There's a ripped from the headline plot, written and filmed months before reality echoed it. There's a final scene of 2 characters doing karaoke after work, headbanging away their exhaustion, belting out their work angst. But a good feature of good storytelling is the experience of empathy, of letting us live a day in someone else's life. Yes, sometimes that's the thrill of competency, of watching a team work together to save lives. But it also means feeling a taste of the never-ending charts and the monotony of paperwork, the job that gives meaning but also might slowly kill you if you never take time to enjoy a fresh, ice-cold beverage on a hot July day. So let us listen to each other, that we can learn the grind that gets us down and find the rest and joy that helps us to move forward. Thanks for coming.